It was a busy time on the island of Sodor. The railway inspector was coming. The signals were checked. Platforms were scrubbed. Everyone wanted the railway to look its best. At last, the big day was here.
The railway inspector arrives today, Sir Topham Hatt said.
What's a railway in spectacles? Percy asked.
Railway inspector,
Gordon huffed. He comes to look at the railway every year, said Thomas. He checks everything is spick and span.
And this year he is to give a special prize to the best engine, added Sir Topham Hatt.
So I want you all to look your best. A special prize, puffed Thomas. I wonder if we could win, asked Percy.
Puh, Gordon snorted. He's bound to give it to an express engine.
Or one with big wheels, said Emily. I think he'll give it to a red engine, said James proudly. Don't listen to them, puffed Thomas. A really useful engine can look as grand as any engine. That afternoon, Thomas and Percy arrived at the quarry. But as the stone was loaded onto the trucks, a big cloud of stone dust whooshed down and landed right on top of Thomas. Yuck, coughed Thomas. Now you'll never win first prize, Percy moaned. Don't worry, Percy, Thomas puffed. All I need is a good washdown. So Thomas raced off. But when he arrived at the washdown, Emily was already there, covered in soap suds. Hurry up! I need to get clean for the inspection. There's no need for you to get clean, said Emily. I'm going to be the grandest engine there. I'll still win first prize, Thomas huffed. And he steamed off to help Percy. Thomas and Percy puffed across the countryside. But when Thomas and Percy arrived at Brendam Docks, they saw Sir Topham Hatt. He was with the railway inspector. Oh no, puffed Thomas, the railway inspector, but I'm still dirty. So Thomas raced back to the washdown. When Thomas got to the washdown, James was already there. I'm going to be the shiniest at the inspection, James sniffed. There's no point in you even being there. This made Thomas cross. He wanted to win first prize more than ever. But James's red coat did look very shiny. I hope my blue coat can look as shiny as James, Thomas puffed to himself. And he steamed back to the docks. Percy and Thomas shunted the quarry freight cars into place. When they had finished, Percy was dirty, and Thomas was dirtier than ever. So they raced to the washdown as fast as they could. This time, Gordon was there.
All done, Gordon puffed proudly.
Thomas thought Gordon looked splendid. Then James and Emily pulled into the station. They looked splendid too. Emily's wheels looked shinier than ever, and James's red paint sparkled in the sun. Now Thomas was worried. There's no point in going to the inspection, Thomas puffed sadly. We'll never win. Of course we can win, Percy puffed. We just need a good clean. Percy and Thomas were covered in soap suds. They were scoured and scrubbed and brushed and buffed. Percy loved being washed, but now Thomas was sad. He thought he would never look as grand as the other engines. James, Emily, and Gordon were waiting for the railway inspector.
The sunlight here makes my dome sparkle, Gordon puffed proudly.
It makes my red paint look shinier than ever, said James. And my wheels glimmer, Emily added. The engines tried to find the sunniest spot in the coal yard. So James backed up. Suddenly, he bumped into a freight car. The freight car rolled into a lever. And then there was a whooshing sound. Oh no, James puffed. Coal poured out everywhere. It poured onto the tracks and all over Gordon, James, and Emily. They weren't gleaming and shiny anymore. Sir Topham Hatt and the railway inspector arrived.
These engines are filthy,
The railway inspector said crossly.
I've never seen so much coal dust.
Just then, Gordon blew to clean his funnel. Coal dust shot into the air. It covered Sir Topham Hatt and the railway inspector.
Sorry, coughed Gordon.
At last, Thomas and Percy arrived. When the railway inspector saw Thomas and Percy, he was delighted.
You two are just what engines should look like,
He said. Thomas and Percy won first prize. The railway inspector gave them each a special rosette. Thomas and Percy beamed with pride. I'm glad you made me come to the inspection, puffed Thomas. It's just like you said, puffed Percy. A really useful engine can look as grand as any engine.
Thomas the Tank Engine wouldn't stop being a nuisance. Night after night, he kept the other engines awake. I'm tired of pushing coaches. I want to see the world. The other engines didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But one night, Edward came to the shed. He was a kind little engine and felt sorry for Thomas. I've got some freight cars to take home tomorrow. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches in the yard. Thank you, said Thomas. That will be nice. Next morning, Edward and Thomas asked their drivers, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off happily to find freight cars. Now, the freight cars are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they are doing. And I'm sorry to say they play tricks on an engine who is not used to them. Edward knew all about the freight cars. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The conductor blew his whistle. Beep, beep, answered Thomas, and started off. But the freight cars weren't ready. Oh, oh, they screamed. Wait, Thomas, wait. But Thomas wouldn't wait. Come on, he puffed. All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss, grumbled the cars. Thomas began going faster and faster. Whoosh! He whistled as he rushed through Henry's tunnel. Hurry, hurry, called Thomas. He was feeling very proud of himself. But the cars grew crosser and crosser. At last, Thomas slowed down as he came to Gordon's Hill. Steady now, steady, warned the driver as they reached the top. He began to put on the brakes. We're stopping, called Thomas. No, 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 answered the cars, bumping into each other. Go on, go on. Before the driver could stop them, they had pushed Thomas down the hill and were rattling and laughing behind him. Poor Thomas tried hard to stop them from making him go too fast. Stop pushing, he hissed. But the cars took no notice. Go on, they giggled in their silly way. There's the station. Oh dear, what shall I do? Cried Thomas. They rattled straight through and swerved into the goods yard. Thomas shut his eyes. I must stop. When he opened his eyes, he saw he had stopped just in front of the buffers. There, watching him, was Sir Topham Hatt. What are you doing here, Thomas? He asked. I've brought Edward's freight cars, Thomas answered. Why did you come so fast? I didn't mean to. I was pushed, said Thomas. You've got a lot to learn about freight cars, Thomas. After pushing them about here for a few weeks, you'll know almost as much about them as Edward. Then you'll be a really useful engine.